Green Bay Packers just got good news and bad news. I'm going to break that down for you guys in this video. If you haven't subscribed yet, please take a second to do so. First, I would love for you guys to leave your comments with the start of the NFL season just around the corner. That means fantasy football is starting to ramp up. Which Packer wide receiver would you take or would you draft? Who's going to have the most beneficial season for fantasy? I personally think it's going to be Dontavian Wicks. I think he's going to be the beneficiary of a lot of touchdown passes from Jordan Love. That's my 2 cents. Leave your comments. I'd love to read through them. So let's jump into it. The good news for the Packers is that they looked very good this last week or this week, as opposed to the week prior against the Denver Broncos, where they looked very bad in joint practice versus the Broncos, and then also chased that up looking equally as poor Sunday night versus the Denver Broncos. And then they turn around and they have their joint practice against Baltimore. They look super good and they chase that up looking even better Saturday, really not making Brian Gutekunst's job any easier, getting that roster down to 53 man. Going to be an interesting few days for the Packers. A lot of things to go over, but if you were to give a game ball to anybody this past weekend, I think it's Aaron Mosby. I think Mosby looked incredibly good, creating turnovers, creating havoc in the backfield. Of course, really not a stranger to that when you start talking about Mosby's history, collegiate history, earning All-American, all Mountain West, honorable mention after recording 40 tackles, 24 solo, 15 and a half tackles for loss, 6 sacks, 3 passes defensed, 6 forced fumbles, 2 fumble recoveries. 6 forced fumbles were the most by any player in program history, and then tied FBS in 2021 for the lead. So obviously in 2022, he went undrafted by the Carolina Panthers. Panthers select him, and then he's been kind of on and off between practice squads between both the Carolina Panthers and the Packers. But he looked super good in pleading his case for the Packers as to why he should be on this 53-man roster. Really not making Brian Gutekunst's job any easier when you start taking a look at the depth chart for the Packers. Of course, you've got Preston Smith, Lucas Van Ness, Brenton Cox, but then you've also got Aaron Mosby there. And then you've got Rashawn Gary and JJ Kingsley-Egnabari. So do the Packers keep 6 DNs? I think if they were to do that, Mosby really made a great case this past Saturday with that hit on the quarterback, causing that fumble, which then resulted in a touchdown, and then creating that turnover with that interception. His hands looked super great. He looked like he had great instincts out there. Of course, not a stranger to football, being in the league since 2022. This dude, he looked good. And sometimes players just get better over time. And this is one of those dudes that just looked super good. Does he make the 53-man roster or not? Time is going to tell, but let's take a look. When you look at the 30-7 performance versus the Ravens, I think here's the bad part for the Packers. Okay, so the good news and bad news. The bad news for the Packers is that they don't have a true solidified backup quarterback. Okay, Michael Pratt, if you had to give the nod to anybody, I think Pratt gets that job, but I really can't confidently say, man, Michael Pratt really earned that job over Sean Clifford. Sean Clifford earned that over Michael Pratt, whatever. Pratt did slightly better, 8 of 12, 80 yards, touchdown, and an interception. And then Sean Clifford, unfortunately for Sean Clifford, he's just looked super uncomfortable in the pocket. He's fumbled it a handful of times this preseason. Just doesn't look like he just doesn't look like he belongs back there, unfortunately, because I really do like Sean Clifford. I just don't see him maintaining his backup position here in Green Bay. I really think the Packers look for a veteran outside of these two guys. I think they end up cutting both of these guys. I'd be shocked if I wouldn't be shocked if they kept Michael Pratt, but I really kind of would be shocked if they kept either of these guys because nobody really made their case in Green Bay. But when you start looking again at Michael Pratt or Sean Clifford, and then the other negative for the Packers and Brian Gutekunst is kicking. Anders Carlson, you could have made the argument that Anders Carlson, it was kind of his job to lose. But then they bring in Greg Joseph, creating this kicking competition, which has really been kind of fun to watch. You don't really get as involved with kickers in the preseason, but the Packers really made quite a show for us fans out there between Anders Carlson and Greg Joseph. If it were me and I were choosing, I would be choosing Greg Joseph all day long. If you see when he kicks, he doesn't give you a heart attack. Anders Carlson is barely making it, whether it's an extra point or a field goal, it's just barely getting through the uprights. It looks like it's going to hit it every time, but then it somehow slices back in. Greg Joseph, you really know if he misses it because it's just going to look like he missed it. Otherwise, he is right down the center. Greg Joseph, if I were giving the starting nod to anybody, it certainly would be Greg Joseph. And I think he made that case known this past Saturday. So let's continue to look at, the depth chart for the Packers, or I'm sorry, the game log for the Packers. Emmanuel Wilson just looks ridiculously good. He looks more and more comfortable. He looks like he's patient. He's waiting for his run blockers to develop. He's running behind them. He looks like a patient runner, but he hits the holes hard and he looks super good. Emmanuel Wilson solidifying his job back in the backfield for the Packers, really pleading his case. And I think it's a good one to make the 53-man roster. I personally would take if you had to only keep 3 running backs on this Packer squad, it would be Emmanuel Wilson. You've got to take Marshawn Lloyd, and then you've got Josh Jacobs. I would be cutting, if it were me, AJ Dillon of the 3, unless they keep 4 running backs. I'm not sure, but Emmanuel Wilson, I can't see a world where this dude gets cut. Malik Heath, man, he has really cemented his spot too, as one of the kept receivers on this 53-man roster, but really not, job not making it really any easier. Bo Melton is one of those guys that I was really hoping for a good performance on, because I think Bo Melton is good, and I think I can see him on this Packer squad creating an impact this season for the Packers. What a touchdown grab by him. I think Bo Melton with that touchdown grab, it's like, okay, the dude is super good. And the way he just came back for that acrobatic catch for Bo Melton, I thought it was very good. Bo Melton, I think, earns a spot on this 53-man roster. Again, same thing with Malik Heath, but then as Samori Toure cut, time is going to tell for the Packers. Again, Brian Gutekunst's job is not made any easier with this performance, because there was guys that looked super good and then also guys that just did not. Okay, so Grant DuBose is one of those guys that, do the Packers keep him because he's looked super good early on, but then the last 2 preseason games he's been non-existent. So who do they keep? And then Welch, if you have another guy that you're going to give a game ball to, outside of Aaron Mosby, it'd be Welch. Welch is just one of those guys that has been making plays and continues to make plays. The Packers, when you look at the depth chart for the Packers at the linebacker position, you've got Tyron Hopper, who I thought made some big plays, and he's only looks like he's going to get better with time. And the more experience this dude gets, I think the more and more I like Tyron Hopper. I think Hopper is going to be a very good defensive player for the Packers. Isaiah McDuffie, Quay Walker, and Welch is one of those guys that, he could very easily make this Packer squad. Same thing with Eric Wilson. And then obviously Edgerrin Cooper. We're still yet to see what this dude can do out there on the football field. I'm curious what he is going, or how he's going to look. But the Packers looking, very good Saturday. Again, not making Brian Gutekunst's job any easier. I want you guys to leave your comments. Let me know your thoughts. Who wins the kicking job? And also, who would I take in fantasy if I were drafting a Packer wide receiver? But as always, go Pack, go.